Hello and welcome to All for United, and this is just another United transfer show. You know how it works now, guys. It is so warm here today, I can't even tell you, but not as hot as all the transfer news that's surrounding United at the moment. We're live, so get your comments into us. We'll try and get through as many of those as possible. We're doing a departure special today, so we're looking at the players who may leave the club this summer. So get your comments in. Let us know who you think should be leaving this summer. How many players you think United can afford to let go? How many you think they will let go? And if we get opportunity, we'll sure discuss some of your comments. Now, obviously, we can't escape all the news that's going around about Jadon Sancho at the moment. So don't worry, guys. We will discuss that, but we'll probably do that a little bit later on in the show. Like I say, today's all about looking at the players that might be leaving our club. So I'm going to start off with probably arguably what would be the highest profile departure this summer, and that is the one of Jesse Lingard. And I just want to pick up quickly on the transfer Q&A show that Ben did with Jamie Jackson on Sunday, which if you hadn't had a chance to see it, guys, check it out. It sent Twitter into absolute frenzy. It was a great show, so have a look and check it out, see what you think. I'll start with you, Aaron. I'll come to you on this first of all. What do you make of the idea of Jesse Lingard going? Do you think it's a good thing that he goes? Do you think he needs to go? Or actually, his form's picked up a little bit recently in the last couple of games. Do you think that might have done enough to make Ollie and the club realise that they should keep hold of him?
So for me, the situation with Jesse Lingard has been, I've had this stance on it for quite some time. It's that I think United wouldn't mind and Ollie wouldn't mind keeping him around, but it's kind of down to what does he want from his career over the next few years as he's kind of approaching his athletic prime. Because I think he has shown in the past that he can be a valuable asset of the team, especially in those kind of games where United are on the back foot and they're trying to press and win the ball back high, and maybe they don't have to break down the low block, but they can counter. But obviously, over the past couple of seasons, his form hasn't been great. And although that's looked like it's picked up over the last couple of games and he's looked decent and that confidence is maybe coming back into him with a couple of goals that he has scored, I think he knows from the kind of players that United are interested in that he will not be in the kind of immediate first 11 plans. He will be just like a rotational kind of player or a utility player. So I think kind of having that sympathy for him as a United Academy graduate stuff, I would like to see him stay and play some sort of a part. But then the other side of me is kind of like, well, I think this is the perfect time for him to maybe seek a move to a team that will play him week in, week out at the age that he is right now, with the experience that he has playing at the highest level, that he could maybe still get a few very good years out of his career playing regular football.
But in terms of the stories, Hader, coming to you on this one, on Jesse Lingard leaving, do you think that this is something that the club are pursuing, or do you think this is more from Jesse Lingard's camp, this interest in a move away, or do you think it's United putting this news out there now in order to try and find potential suitors for their player this summer?
It's definitely a bit of both. I think once you sign with Mino Raiola, it's pretty clear that you're angling towards a move away. And it's quite clear as well that Ollie, I don't think, thinks he's a right fit at the club. What he does offer is he does offer energy and work rate. I think that can't be denied, but it's quite clear that his end product isn't good enough. He went almost a year without scoring. He scored a few, obviously, in the last couple of weeks. But looking at his attitude and what sort of springs to mind is, the sort of off-field videos. And look, everyone in the modern football, day is going to be on social media. That's not a problem. But the way that he's one of the older ones in the squad, and the way he's still acting in quite an immature manner, I don't think you want that sort of character around at Man United. Now, we're looking at the possible departures. I think along with Dallo, like you said, he's one that will bring in more of a considerable fee. And he's had some great moments at United. I think, he contributed hugely in Jose's second season. Highlights for me with him were 2 goals in 2 finals, 1 in the FA Cup and 1, of course, in the League Cup. But he's had a dismal year. Off-field problems certainly have impacted it, and I think that can't be, sort of played down because, he's had family problems, etc. But for me, it's time for him to move on. I don't think he's good enough. I think he's looking actively. I know there's a few clubs in Italy that are interested. You've seen a lot of English players go over and be successful. So I think definitely both parties, well, all 3 parties, including the player, are looking towards that. So I think Ollie is not a fan. He's paying him because the players are knackered. But I do think he should move on, and he's not good enough to be, coming on as a replacement for the likes of Bruno or Pogba, etc., or whoever's playing on the wing. We need better, and it's time for him to go play week in, week out, and expect him actually to flourish in a less pressure environment. So hopefully United fans won't complain when he does go if he starts performing.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thanks, Ada. And a comment just coming here from Kieran, who says Jesse should go and leave for first team football. And I think that's probably a good way to sort of come into the latest update on Jesse Lingard. I've seen something this afternoon that suggests that Solskjaer would like him to stay at the club maybe this summer, and that might be down to the fact that he doesn't think he's going to be able to sign a lot of players, which we'll touch on later. But he cannot assure him first team football every week. So, Paulie, I'll come to you now. We're all massive Man United fans here. We're, working for United. I've got Paulie, I've got Arian, I've got Hayder. We're all got one common thing. We're all massive United fans. From a United fan's point of view, Paulie, put your fan head on. What's your thoughts on Jesse Lingard leaving the club? Is he a player you'd like to see go, or would you like to see him stay?
I think it's time for him to leave. I personally wouldn't mind him staying. I like the kid. I like the guy, but I do think it's time for him to go. He, like Hayder said, he contributed massively in Jose Mourinho's second season. He scored 13 goals that year. He scored in cup finals. He scored a glorious goal in the World Cup for England. He was a starter for an England team that went to the semifinals in the World Cup. There clearly is talent, but that was 2 years ago. And certainly in the last year, but really in the last year and a half, he hasn't shown that talent. And he certainly, there's a role for him to play. He can come on, he provides you with that energy and his work rate and his pressing, and that opens up space for other players. But you can't rely on him in any sort of, especially in a rotational role. Yeah, unless he's coming off the bench to help shore up a 1-goal game or a 2-0 lead over the last 20 to 25 minutes. There's not really a place for Jesse Lingard in this team anymore, especially as this team improves. And I think that role of providing energy and providing a more defensive forward, Andreas Pereira can fulfill. Now, Lingard is a smarter player than Pereira. Pereira's probably a little bit better technically. There's take and give with both of them, but ultimately it comes down to Lingard has about a year left on his contract. Pereira has 4. Nobody wants Pereira, so it's better for Lingard, for his career, for United, to not have to carry that extra player where you basically have someone else that can play that role. And for him personally, I think going somewhere where there'll be less pressure on him will really help him rediscover his form, and he can contribute to a Premier League club or a club in any of Europe's top 5 leagues. I think a change of scenery right now would be best for him.
Okay, cheers, Paulie. Brilliant. I've just got to wrap this comment up because a bit of love for you here, Hayder. I don't know if you can see that, mate. Usman saying you can for a stream. I like that, yeah. But he's also saying that, look, we can't sell too many players. That's what I want to come on to now. Because, the squad, is quite thin at the moment. We've seen that, in games when we've tried to rotate, or like Paulie said, when we want to make substitutions, the players that have come on haven't affected the game as much as we'd like. So, Arian, how careful do United need to be about selling too many players at the moment when they don't actually know how many they're going to be able to get in, who they're going to be able to get in?
Yeah, I think that's the thing with United right now. When you compare them to the likes of, I think City are kind of the top when it comes to the quality and depth. United don't have that right now, and that's what's needed. And that's why it's odd to see on social media and stuff when people are arguing about some other high-profile players coming in that will hinder the game time of others. No, the rotation to win trophies, you need the quality. You need quality to come off the bench. And I think, like the guys have said, I think maybe Lingard is just not at that level right now where he comes on. He actually impacts the game in a positive manner, maybe to defend, yes, but going forward, not so much. So I think it's, in one way, I think it would be best for United and that kind of close that chapter and sell him and then bring in players that are better and that improve the team immediately. But then, like the comment says, you cannot sell everybody. And if the team is not prepared to maybe go out and spend the money that's necessary to bring in enough players to shore up that depth and to bring in quality and not just anybody, then you don't sell everybody. But like Paulie said, though, I think Lingard and Pereira fall into that same category. And so I think you have to keep one of them. I think Pereira is the one that kind of has still a ceiling and younger, more time on his contract. And I think there is more to get out of from him than maybe from somebody like Lingard right now.
Yeah, no, good point. And I think what's interesting me a little bit around the thing with like selling players and moving players on, there was a lot of talk when this pandemic started that actually the way clubs might look to do business is almost like swap deals, or definitely sort of including players in deals for other players in order to, you know, get deals over the line. Now, I'm not saying that Jesse Lingard would be a good weight for someone like Sancho necessarily, but there was some talk last week that Dortmund may have been interested in taking Tahi Chong, for example, on loan for a season, and that would become part of the Sancho deal. You know, do you think there might be some scope, Hayden, for us to sort of, you know, put players in deals, if you know what I mean, with other clubs? Or is the problem, are Dortmund looking at the likes of Jesse Lingard and thinking, well, actually, if he's not good enough for Manchester United, he's probably not good enough for us?
United's problem over the years is that the fact that they've given massive contracts to players that aren't good enough. Lingard obviously is one of them, and looking at Phil Jones, and you even have to see with the Sanchez deal that, and Juventus have the same issue actually, is that they've got plenty of players like Douglas Costa, Gonzalo Higuain, you know, players like Sami Khedira who are on massive wages and they can't shift them because nobody wants to buy them, and I think we've got the same issue. Dortmund aren't going to be interested in Jesse Lingard, let's be honest. Dortmund have a certain model and you know, a transfer strategy where they're looking at younger players who they're going to develop and make sure they maximize their transfer fee and then sell them on to United or someone stupid enough to go and pay over 100 million. Not to say that we shouldn't pay that for Sancho, because I think we should, but what we're seeing, I think, at the moment is that United, they're not really sure their departure strategy. I mean, if you look at what's happened during Ollie's tenure, we've let 7 players go, we've only brought 5 in, and let's just break that down a little bit. You look at Lukaku going, we didn't sign anyone until Igalo in January, which is negligent. We're lucky that Mason Greenwood stepped up, and that again was a gamble. And then you look at Sanchez going out again, Dan James came in, and Herrera went out, nobody replaced him. Bruno came in a little while later. Young, Valencia, Darmian all went, only Wan-Bissaka came in. Fellaini went as well, nobody came in to replace him. So what we're seeing here is that we're selling players, but we're not actually buying players to come in. And that's, I think, the frustration for United fans, is that Man City are able to bring in 5+ players a summer. So for us to be offering players in return, we should just be buying. Getting rid of players is important, but we need to be buying because there are clear deficiencies in the squad. And what you're seeing is there's an air of complacency, I think, creeping in slightly with a few players in the starting 11, because they know that the players below them, aka Jesse Lingard, Pereira, aren't good enough. And what you're seeing then, and that's, as you know, people have been saying, that we do need more quality, because you higher quality in the squad, 2 top players fighting for 1 position, automatically the standards just go right up. So for me, we need to get rid of players, but it's just about buying. We've got the space in the squad to do that. But, you know, poor management, giving large contracts to terrible players is not the right way forward, and it's hindering us in the market.
Exactly, and obviously, you know, we had Phil Brown on last week, and he was saying something very similar. We've had comments coming in here that Dortmund will just want cash. You know, they're well known for being a selling team. You know, they're not too worried about, you know, if they wanted the likes of Lingard, they'd have bought him and things like that. And I think that's a fair point. Now I'm going to move on to another player who has been heavily linked with a move away for United, probably for all summer, but probably a couple of years. But this last week or so, there's been a lot of talk about Chris Smalling going back to Italy to go and play for Inter Milan. You know, last week it looked like, from the comments that were coming from Solskjaer, he was a player that might even have a future at United. I think Solskjaer's been really impressed with his performance over in Italy. I think he's been in a couple of people's Serie A's team of the year. So, you know, he's had a great season, and fair play to him for that. But Arian, I'll come to you on this. I mean, do you see Chris Smalling's future now in Italy after this season?
No, I think I take all these press conferences, especially regarding players that aren't at the club, with a pinch of salt, after he said that Sanchez will come back and prove everybody wrong.
Yeah.
Uploaded. So I think with Smalling, it's just a different way of handling players, like Solskjaer does, that he just doesn't want to depreciate their value by commenting negatives about them in his media obligations. But I think Smalling, as much as I've never really been somebody who criticized him too much, because I think defensively he didn't let us down that much. It's just the other deficiencies in this game that have just been surplus to requirements at a club like United. I think it's the perfect time for him to move, and especially after the kind of reputation that he built in Italy over himself, that they were commenting on his performances in flying colors and stuff like that, and clearly Inter took a liking to what he was able to accomplish at Roma, and I think he just suits that defense-heavy style of the Serie A over especially what Solskjaer is trying to do at United, which is playing out from the back. United never go long anymore from goal kicks. They always go into the centre backs and try to distribute. And I think we've known over the years that Smalling is just not that good with the ball at his feet. As good as he might be in the air and just at the defensive shape, he's just not great at distributing out from the back. And that's just the basis of what United are trying to do moving forward. And I just don't think, with the profile of centre backs that are already at the club and the likes of Mengi and Tuanzebe coming through, I just don't think there's a place for him right now in the long-term future. And it would be a good time to catch him.
Oh, that's fair enough, mate. Thank you. And what about you, Paulie? I mean, if we do take sort of Solskjaer's comments at face value, and he does believe he has a future, if Smalling was to stay at the club next season, is he better than Lindelof? Is he better than Maguire? Does he make our starting 11?
He's definitely not better than Harry Maguire, and he's a better defender than Victor Lindelof, but he can't play with his feet, and that's it. For Solskjaer, the attack starts at the back, and it starts with playing out the back. It starts with the distribution, and if your defenders can't get the ball to your midfield or even further forward, then you're not going to play. I mean, Smalling played the entire second half of the season 2 years ago when Solskjaer took over. He was a permanent fixture in that starting 11, and he wasn't bad, but Solskjaer still looked at him and said, right, you're not it. You're not the guy. And he was one of those players last year who he basically said to Woodward, find a way to get rid of him. If teams don't want to, pay us a transfer fee and pay his wages, just find a way to get him out. And they managed to loan him out to AS Roma in the hopes that it would become permanent. It almost did. That fell through, but it's clear that he did that because he said, you don't have a future here. And given that Solskjaer is very high on Tuanzebe, and he likes Lindelof. Lindelof's very good with his feet. He has other deficiencies in his game. It doesn't seem like Smalling would ever step into the first choice 11, and I don't think he wants someone that's going to block Tuanzebe's path from, at the very least, playing in the cup games and pushing Lindelof to be that number one or number two center back in there. So I think if Smalling were to come back, he'd find himself in the same situation as he's found himself almost his entire career, which is right next to Phil Jones.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, thank you. And obviously, Phil Jones is probably another name you can add to the list. Don't forget, guys, we do want you to get in touch with us. Your comments are coming in. I want to know how many players you think should leave the club this year. How many players can United afford to leave the club? Get in touch with us and see what you guys think about that. Hayden, I'm going to come to you on this because, like I touched on at the beginning of this part, there has been a lot of talk about him going to Inter Milan. Obviously, Roma would have loved to have sort of done a deal for him, I think, in the summer, but that sort of hasn't materialised yet. As yet, they seem a bit apart on the valuation. What are you actually hearing about the stories on this about him going to Inter?
I've done a little bit of digging, but it's nothing really that concrete. I wouldn't say there's any top sources stating it at all. You have to remember that Conte isn't really a fan of Skriniar. I don't know why. He's obviously not worked in the back three properly. For Conte, obviously, he likes to play that system. I think Smalling would excel in that system. But to be honest, there's nothing really concrete or that's suggesting that it's going to happen. I think we've got to kind of wait to see what happens with Ndombele at Spurs, because I do believe there have been talks between Spurs and Inter, and Skriniar is a player that they have mentioned as a potential swap. So it's quite clear Roma don't have the money. To be honest with you, I believe that we were only a couple of million euros apart, and if United really want to just get on with their business, I think they probably should have accepted it. What's a couple of million to the club? Maybe that's just me saying it as a fan and not as obviously as a footballer or a financial person. But for me, if you look at the Italian football, it's just suited to the way Smalling plays. He's taken like a duck to water. Like the boys were saying, I completely echo everything they're saying, that he can't really play out the back, but he's a good defender. It would be a case of one step forward, two steps back if we're bringing him back into our defence. I don't think he's good enough. He's shown in 10 years at United that he isn't quite cut out to be a top centre back, especially to take us to the next level. I mean, you just have to look at Italian football, the way it's played. There's obviously much more emphasis on defensive structure. It's a lot more compact. It's a lot slower as well. Ashley Young's looking like a really good player. I was talking to a few Inter fans the other day, and they were saying how brilliant Young has been. He was playing at wing back. He had an assist as well for Lukaku the other day. So it's definitely suited towards players like Young and Smalling. And to be honest, I wish him well. He's a great professional. He seems really happy. He's been brilliant in Italy. He's been probably one of the best centre-backs. So it's just best for all parties to move him along. But there's no real concrete reports, I would say, or anything from reliable sources to suggest that he is going to be going.
Thanks for that, mate. Yeah, no, I can echo that on Chris Smalling. I think he's a top guy. I've had an opportunity to see him a couple of times and have a quick chat with him. He's a real nice guy, and I think he's done so well in Italy. I think he just deserves that opportunity now to sort of, kick his career on. We've had a comment coming in here while we're talking about defenders, guys. Interesting one. I'll come to you on this, Harry. And the whole thing about Luke Shaw's another player that seems to split opinion with United. Some people really rate him, some people don't. We've had Frank 1990 here say, does Luke Shaw have one more season to prove himself? And if he doesn't, does he get the chop? We've talked about left-back area before. Do you think it's interesting about Luke Shaw? Do you think that United need to improve there?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting conversation because going into the summer, left-back has never been a point of discussion when it comes to United strengthening immediately. And I think when it comes to the fans, the popular opinion is that we are quite surplus at that position. And I think fans are not really believing in Williams and giving him time to develop. And I think Luke Shaw has always had his critics over the years. But I do think that what he was able to accomplish this season, and especially the show of character that he did when Williams got him out of the team to come back in and kind of up the level of his performance and resemble the Luke Shaw of old from before he got that leg break against PSV in that unfortunate season where he was looking great. I think he did enough to kind of warrant him one more year. It was like an audition this year to show whether he is able to play week in, week out for United on multiple fronts and contribute. And I think he has shown that he is good enough, and there is still a player there. He's still not the oldest. He still has time to kind of continue his development and grow into that role of being United's first choice left back. But I definitely don't think that he has that much time. So I think I would agree with that comment that maybe one more year for him to solidify himself. And while Williams, I think, can provide decent backup for him and let him develop and play the cup games while Luke Shaw is getting the more first team minutes on a regular basis. But I do think that sooner rather than later that position will become something that United will be looking at, with right back already locked down by Wan-Bissaka for the foreseeable future.
No, yeah, I totally agree with you. I change my mind all the time about Luke Shaw. He's one of them. It's a bit of a difficult one for me, but I'm going to move on a little bit now because I want to talk about some of the youngsters, and it's quite interesting surrounding some of the youngsters at the moment. I think we're starting to see them get quite frustrated at United. Obviously, we've seen Angel Gomez. He's refused to sign a contract, and now he's gone to Lille, and he's gone on loan to Boa Vista. I find that really interesting, to be fair. I mean, Angel Gomez was apparently one of the beacons of our academy. I've watched quite a lot of academy football. He looked a decent player, but I think it's quite telling that he's ended up going somewhere like Lille. No disrespect to Boa Vista. I mean, earlier in the season when he wasn't going to sign a contract, he was linked with the likes of Chelsea, and he's ended up going to Lille. But United have been so good with their youngsters over the year, arguably one of the best clubs at sort of developing their young players and the way that they've gone about it, whether it be at the club or through loan moves. But how crucial now is it that some of their younger players with high potential, and specifically we're going to look at maybe Tahi Chong and James Garner, how important is it now that we get some football in those guys, into those guys? What do you reckon, Paulie? Obviously Tahi Chong's been linked with Werder Bremen. James Garner's been linked with Swansea City. Do you think they'd be good moves for those guys, and do they need to play some football?
Oh, it's so important. Tai Chong has basically been on the periphery for now a year and a half. He's basically outgrown the academy level, but whenever he gets a shot with the first team, he has been underwhelming. James Garner, a bit of a different story. He's much younger. He's 17. He was 17 at the start of the season, played a bit this year, and technically on the ball, fantastic player. He has everything that you want to see. His potential is sky high. Physically, he was getting shoved around. He was getting shoved around against Astana, and he was getting shoved around against Partizan, and those. When you come into the Premier League, it's only going to be more physical, and that's not his fault. He's 18. He needs to grow more. Like that's a time thing. Time will solve that, but he too has outgrown the U23 level. So it's just a matter of getting these guys consistent football against men, against bigger players that are going to shove them around, so that they learn how to play that way, so that when they come back to the United team, they are ready to contribute. That's really all it is. I don't understand why they're getting so frustrated. I know that United had a small squad and we expected to see more of them this year, and we didn't. But Mason Greenwood came in. Brandon Williams wasn't even taken on tour last summer, and he came in, and Solskjaer has proven, if you can help me and you can contribute and I can count on you, you're going to get your chance. Gomez and Chong got a few chances this year, and they weren't bad, but they didn't say you can't drop me either. There was nothing about their performances that said you need to put me back into the team. Like Rashford scoring 2 goals against Midtjylland and then following that up by scoring 2 goals against Arsenal. Van Gaal couldn't drop him. So none of them have done that. And obviously Solskjaer sees them in training, and one can assume they weren't exactly knocking on the door there, but it's clear that, you look at Williams, you look at Greenwood, if you are knocking on the door and forcing the manager's hand, he will play you. Since that hasn't happened, it's important for their development. Let's get them out and playing senior football as often as we possibly can.
Yeah, brilliant point. No, I agree with you. And one of my big worries is that I've read some comments today from Werder Bremen, their chief exec, their manager, and reading between the lines in the comments, they were almost suggesting that they may be struggling to convince Tahi Chong to actually go to Werder Bremen. I mean, they seem like they want the deal to happen. All parties probably want the deal to happen, but they might be having a bit of a job convincing Tahi Chong. I mean, really, he just needs to take these opportunities and grab them with both hands, because at his age, he needs to be playing football, doesn't he?
Absolutely. I think all our youngsters do. And personally, for me, I think we should be sending them down to the Championship. But they need to be playing in England. Closer than, I think German football is as close as you can get to Premier League or British football. But they need to be going and playing in a league where they're going to have similar, challenges, I suppose, that you're going to see if they played in the Premier League. So, for me, with Tahi Chong, I've never really seen anything to suggest that he's going to be a world beater. I'm not really convinced. Like Paulie said, he's had plenty of chances to show what he can do, and I think he looked quite nice, obviously, at left back the other day. I'm not going to say he's going to come play left back, because one game doesn't prove anything. But for me, I think that what United haven't done enough in the past is send these players out on loan. There's no point sitting there playing in the 23s when you need to be playing first team adult football. So for me, I just think that Tahi Chong needs to take any opportunity that comes forward. I would be sending him probably to a promotion team for next season, or down into the Championship if I was Ollie. But we also need to remember that although we are very proud of our tradition of bringing in youth, and it's an amazing tradition, I don't think many other top 6 teams in the Premier League do that, or even around Europe. It's something that we should be proud of. It's in our DNA. Yeah. But you need to remember as well that not every player is going to be a Mason Greenwood. Even with Brandon Williams, he's shown amazing determination. But let's be completely honest, he's still so young. He's still very raw. When I watched him in the game the other day, I thought he was pretty poor, to be honest, defensively and going forward. And you can't be putting this expectation on these young players to be filling in. And when we were under Sir Alex, we did have the youngsters here and there, but they were sent out on loan. They were playing bit part roles rather than more important roles. If you're Mason Greenwood, of course, you're going to play week in, week out. You're absolutely class. You're a different level. But these other kids, they might go and have decent careers and they might not play United. So we just got to be realistic. And looking at Gomez, he showed promise, but he was never going to make the grade. And looking at the youth now, I'll be completely honest, apart from Mason Greenwood, none of them I don't think are going to be world beaters.
Yeah, no, and I agree. But an interesting comment here from WWE Red's show. Do you guys think that Angel has mostly been left out due to his size? I mean, just to quickly come on that, I think the reason Gomez didn't stay at United was more down to the fact that maybe they couldn't give him the first team assurances that he wanted, and maybe the financial package wasn't quite right. I don't think we worry about the size too much now, or at least we shouldn't do, since the world was introduced to Lionel Messi. I don't know if you agree, Arian, but I think the days of worrying about how big players are and physical side of it, they're kind of gone out there. I remember a story about Arsenal turning down Jermaine Defoe as a striker when he was a young lad. I mean, you look at parts of Jermaine Defoe's career, I bet Arsenal wish they'd have had him at times. He'd have been an excellent striker for them and the way that they played. So I don't really think it's to do with his physical attributes. Would you agree?
Yeah, and I think the perfect example for that is Juan Mata. He's not some sort of a huge physical player, but he comes on and he can change a game. He shows you the kind of X factor that I think, like the guy said, even Chong isn't the most physically imposing player, but he's getting his chances and he's just struggling to take them most of the time. Like the guys have said, that they just haven't done anything that has made Ollie think like, oh, maybe he fits that team better than somebody who was already playing in that position. And I think when you think of Gomez, he's had some chances at the start of the season where he looked decent, but I think that the issues with him were also more down to his personality and character, I think, because he didn't want to sign the contract. Maybe I'm not sure of the whole ins and outs of it, but I would assume that they just end up not agreeing on first team promises as well as money, and that led to him leaving. But look, you see all those other players where you don't even hear of contract negotiations, like Greenwood and Williams. They just sign the deal and get on with their work. And then, like the comment said, it's how you impose yourself in that first team and the impression that you make. And I think even looking back to Mason Greenwood, he didn't have a fantastic debut against Cardiff. He missed quite a lot of sitters, but he showed that he has that game-changing ability in the Premier League, even when he was this skinny 17-year-old making his debut. And now he went on this season to kind of knuckle down, keep working, and you see what that brought. But like Hayter said, not every player is going to be that world beater. There will be those Jesse Lingards that can be squad players at United for years to come. But I think that a lot of that comes down to your dressing room presence and other factors than just footballing ability.
Yeah, no, brilliant. So I think we can obviously all agree that these young players, obviously, we need to get them out playing football. Let's see what they do in their first team environment. And, then let's get them in if they're good enough. I mean, one of the biggest successful loan spells I remember Danny Welbeck going to Sunderland, and he did really well there. And then he came back and Danny Welbeck made a good career for himself at United for 3 or 4 seasons. So you can do it, if you impress and you approach those loans with the right attitude. Now, we've got about 5 minutes left, guys. So as promised, we are going to quickly touch on Jadon Sancho. We're going to talk about this guy, I think, now for many a week. I think this is one that looks like it's going to rumble on. I certainly don't think anything's going to be done in the near future. Jamie Jackson said maybe within the week on Sunday, but there has been developments since then that have made me slightly less optimistic. I mean, I'll come to you first on this, Paulie. Are you starting to get quite nervous about the possibility of this deal, or are you still confident that it might happen given everything that we've seen today? Seen in this last week, I should say.
I'm pretty confident this is going to get done. This seems to be Woodward's style. We saw it with Harry Maguire last year. It was the #1 target, and it dragged on all summer. We saw it with Lukaku. We knew that we wanted to sell him. We knew Inter wanted to buy him, and it dragged on until right before the deadline. We saw it with Paul Pogba. That dragged on until into August. That's just the way Woodward works with these big money transfers, and part of that is Woodward has turned this club into a commercial giant, and the revenues that we bring in are massive, and he's bragged about that so much, and every other club says, well, we want some of that money because they know we have that money, and he doesn't want to get taken for a ride. And so we should commend him for that, even though we could probably afford the 120 million euros that Dortmund want, that they didn't just say 120 million. We didn't say, right, we'll just give you that. We're negotiating on it. We're trying to get a fair price. We're trying not to get, like I said, taken for a ride. It's a problem that we created by making so much money. But ultimately, I just think that right now, it's not the amount of money. It's the way that the money is going to get transferred, of how much up front, how much in installments, how much in add-ons. What can we knock down? Both clubs are basically just trying to figure out how they could sell this to their fans. Like, it was 120 million that we ended up paying, but really some of that is in add-ons and incentive. The same way that, Martial was reported as 56 million, but we only ended up paying about 45 million for that because not all the incentives were hit. So, if United end up knocking off 20 million of that price, but it's reported as 120 million, so Dortmund can sell that to their fans, that would be a happy medium, and that's what they're discussing now, in my opinion.
Yeah, brilliant. No, and I think that echoes a lot of the thoughts of the people that we've had both on the transfer show and the transfer Q&A show that Ben's been doing. Ben did one earlier today with Chris Winterburn. If you haven't had a chance to check it out yet, do check it out. It's another great watch, just like the Jamie Jackson one. And the interesting thing for me, what Chris Winterburn said in that interview was this whole thing that, you know, Michael Zorc has been known to make these outlandish comments before about players not going, the likes of Dembele and Aubameyang, and then we've seen them move in the end eventually. But that's more because the players have obviously gone on strike and forced the issue. Hader, I'm going to come to you on this. You know, do you think we should be more inclined to take Michael Zorc's comments more seriously than we might have done on Dembele and Aubameyang transfer, just because someone like Sancho right now isn't agitating for the move?
Yeah, I think you have to. Michael Zorc's one of the best in the business. The way that they purchase players and turn them around is first class. There's no one else that does it the way they do. It's quite clear that Dortmund are not going to budge from that transfer fee. We know that. We've known that since probably January, if I'm being honest with you. We knew that we had to get Champions League probably to sign him. So United have had all this time to to work this out and to do some work behind the scenes. And the fact that we haven't done that is kind of worrying. But as the boys say, that United don't wrap up deals quickly like Chelsea do. And I did tweet earlier that I reckon Havertz will be done before Sancho is, and then cue the meltdown. But going back onto talk, I think he's been genuinely serious. It's obviously a bit of a negotiation ploy as well. I think what he's saying is, if you want him, you've got to pay. And I think Dortmund are, the positive thing is they're willing to sell at that price. So every player's got their price. But when you're seeing the likes of Dembele go on strike, Aubameyang, they want it out. I don't think Sancho wants out. I think he wants to join Man United, but he won't force the move. He won't go on strike. He might go and say, look, I want the move, but he's not going to force it because Dortmund have been great to him. He's where he is because of the fact he moved to Dortmund instead of staying at City and playing a bit part role. So I think he has great respect for the club. He's indebted to what they do. And he actually made some comments. They had a friendly today, and he said that, you know, it's really great seeing all these young players and, seeing them grow. And he's one of the senior players now, even though he's only 20. So I think the case of the matter is that Man United are clearly interested. The players interested. Dortmund are willing to sell at the right price. What's frustrating United is the fact that probably they think they can knock the price down. And we've seen in the past, they're just going to go and pay the fee that Dortmund want in the end. And I think the positive thing as well is that, I'm very calm about this. Maybe one of the few, but I think it'll happen. But what's positive is the fact that you're looking at all the top journalists out there. Fabrizio Romano is saying that personal terms aren't a problem. United, they just got to figure out the structure, as Paulie said. So we do that. When that happens is another story, but that needs to be done as soon as possible. And to be honest with you, I think we will see something different. I think we'll see, whether the board are actually serious about, making United the top team again. So I'm fairly confident, and I think we will get maybe 2 or 3 through the door, and we'll be better next season.
Brilliant. We have to stay confident, don't we, guys? Look, the weather's great. United have had a great season. We're still in the Europa League, by the way. We're into the semi-finals on Sunday, obviously. The season's been a good season, so let's try and keep our positivity going. Let's not get too downbeat about it. But Arian, obviously Michael Zorc, people have said that he's looked silly in the past when he's made these sort of bold comments that people aren't going to leave, and then they have left. But actually, it was I saw something today, which was a good point, actually. When the player then goes to him and says, look, I want to leave, when the actual bid does come in and he says, I want to leave, he doesn't actually look that silly, because he can turn to his fans and say, actually, look, we haven't given in here, we haven't changed our mind. It was the player that wanted to leave. So how important do you think, in order for this to go through, is it that at some point Sancho has to go and hand in some sort of transfer request, or politely say, look, I want to move?
Yeah, I think that's huge in all deals, because a player doesn't have to always vocally go to the media and say, I want to leave, and then go on strike like we've seen with Dortmund in the past recent couple of transfer deals, the more high profile ones. But I think the player's desire to leave is what motivates both clubs. The reports from Romano that the terms are agreed are encouraging for United fans and for United, because they know that once they clear that big hurdle that is the fee and the structure, they know that the player is keen, and that's the kind of player that United do want to bring in. So I do think that the longer this drags out, and especially with the deadline being as far as October and the season starting in September 12th, I do think that it might come to the need where Sancho will have to say, listen, can we get a move on here because I want to know if I'm staying or if I'm leaving, because his career also matters, and that stuff in his head is definitely not going to help. But I think to play devil's advocate for Ed Woodward, he does have to negotiate. Like Paulie said, you can't get turned over and Dortmund say we want 120 up top, and he just gives it, because then that ruins everything for the future. And even the deal with Wan-Bissaka was only £50 million, but that was still split. That wasn't just all the way up front. That was still split over a couple of payments. So I do think it just requires patience. And I don't know why the fans thought, because the speculation came out early, that the deal would be wrapped up early, because that's just not United style. You just have to get used to it and stay calm. But the rumors have been so concrete that I think we should be more confident than kind of pessimistic about this deal getting wrapped up sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I mean, my final thought on this to all United fans is just stay calm. I think this deal is so massive to United this summer. They put all their eggs in one basket. They've made no secret of the fact that he's their number one target. I think it will get done, but actually, I think Sancho's sort of party now and his side of it, I think may have to make the next move in order for it to move on a little bit more. We might have to hear a bit more from Jadon in terms of whether, even if it's not directly to Dortmund, maybe through the media or something, he might need to make the next move. Unfortunately, guys, that's all we've got time for today, but I hope you've enjoyed the show. It's been great to chat to you guys. Hader, thanks for coming on, mate.
Thank you, mate. It's been a pleasure as always.
Yeah, cheers, mate. Arian, it's been great to work with you, mate. First time you've been on. We'll look to see you a lot more in the future, mate.
Yeah, it was a blast. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, cheers. And same to you, Paulie, as well, mate. Thanks for coming on. It's been brilliant to chat to you and get your insight, mate.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Look forward to doing it again.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely do it again. I mean, these shows are just going to be so hectic at the moment with all the transfer stories around. Don't forget, guys, give the channel a subscribe, give us a like. There's plenty of great content on here. I've talked about the transfer Q&As. If you haven't seen any of them yet, go and check them out. There's been 3 of those now, and they're all brilliant, to be fair. Ben does a great job with the guests he gets on there. We have some great journalists. Football's back. We're in the Europa League, so we've got the breakdown and banter shows there going on at the moment. We've got the match reactions. We've got match day mornings. There's so much great content on this channel, so make sure you keep watching, like and subscribe, and get the notifications on as well. Thanks again to you boys for coming on, and we'll see you on Friday for just another United transfer show.